would like come to their house and terrorize them.
Why?
So yeah, back to this story because guess what? It gets worse.
Oh no, it's already so bad. Why do you think that? Because it's wrong. You're wrong. You're just wrong. And we are live. Hi, I'm Kit.
And I am Anne.
And this is the Petunias in Potholes Podcast. And today we are going to talk about justice.
Justice.
Yeah, justice. And it's an interesting topic. I feel like you have to define justice at the top, right? Because I think everybody considers justice. People think about justice differently. Like for some people, justice is crime and punishment. And for other people, justice is everyone being given what they deserve in both the sense of punishment and both the sense of like righteous deliverance of what is justified, right? So like, when you talk about social justice, for instance, like people, think of justice in that realm as the thing that says that we should all be given equality, not just equality, but equal ability to thrive, equal opportunity to succeed, right? And so justice is kind of broad. And I think today we'll probably talk about all of these different formats of justice, all of these different ways of thinking about justice. So I thought a good way for us to start off would be talking about kind of the core definition of justice, which is the crime and punishment justice. And I think Anne may have some tales of justice for us to start us off.
I do. Actually, I have one true crime that comes to mind specifically. And let me just make sure I have my notes on hand so I get all my facts correct. So this man was described as the bully of an entire town. He was a hardcore motherfucker and not in a good way. His name was Ken McElroy, and he was a huge asshole. He was an attempted murderer. He resided in Skidmore, Missouri. And yeah, he became the focus of an international sensational story because he was murdered in broad daylight in front of multiple witnesses, and no one came forward and said anything about who did it. To this day, we don't know exactly who pulled the trigger. So yeah, I'm going to just kind of talk about him a little bit. So in all, he was actually indicted 21 times. He escaped conviction each fucking time except for the very last time. So a little bit about Ken. He was born in 1934. He was the 15th of 16 children. He was born into a really poor migrant tenant farming family. His parents' names were Tony and Mabel. And they had moved between Kansas and the Ozarks before they finally settled down in Missouri. He dropped out of school at the age of 15, and he quickly established himself as a cattle rustler and a small-time thief and a womanizer at the age of 15. Like, think about that. He's 15 and he's already like a big fucking dick, right?
Wow.
Yeah, like it's absolutely insane. Like where are your parents, young man? Like, isn't there like a truancy officer back then? Like what is going on, you know? Um so yeah, he was suspected at being involved in like all these kinds of thefts, like gasoline, grain, alcohol, antiques, livestock, over 2 decades of crimes. And witnesses usually refused to testify because he would intimidate them and he would follow them home or park outside their homes and he would watch them. Like, he was like, what the fuck? And he also, believe it or not, fathered more than 10 fucking kids with different women. Yep. Um, his last wife, Trina McLeod, she was 12 years old when they met, and he was 35. Yeah, yep. I was just waiting for that to sink in.
I mean, 12, you said?
Uh-huh.
12 and 35.
Yes, and he her a lot.
And you said this was in, did you say this was in Arkansas? Is that where you said it was?
Missouri.
You know, all those
Missouri.
states kind of blend in for me, but
Yeah.
I can't imagine that it was legal for a 35-year-old to marry a 12-year-old, but you know, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if I was wrong, since
Well, her parents did object to the relationship at first, but he just burned down their house and shot the family dog. So they begrudgingly agreed to let their daughter marry him because he would like come to their house and terrorize them.
why did they let him get away with burning their house down and killing their family dog in order to convince them to let him marry their daughter? Is that what I'm understanding?
The man was psycho, and at that point he had already like gotten away. Like, everyone was afraid of him. The entire town was fucking afraid of this man. And like he kept getting like off scot-free. And so you got to think of like the mental mindset, you know, like we could go after him, but in the event that he gets out, he's going to come straight for us.
Oh,
you
wow.
know? And I think they had other children to think about as well. Like, not, you know, sorry that she was the sacrificial lamb in this situation, but like,
Yeah, that's a hard thing to have to decide on, and what a miscarriage of justice, right? If this guy can do such horrible things and then be released and continue to terrorize the people who put him away in the
there's
first
literally
place.
no justice happening for this entire town right now.
Wow.
Like, this man is just fucking terrorizing them, and he, you know, like, so she gets pregnant at 14. She drops out of school in the 9th grade. You know, because 14 is a freshman in high school. Like, I'm about to have, my youngest is going to be 14 in February. Could you imagine? Like, I couldn't imagine.
That's horrific. That's so sad.
Right. So he, so she drops out of school in the 9th grade. She's pregnant, and he's still living with his second wife, Alice, at this time. And so this little pregnant little girl, goes and lives with Alice and Ken. And he divorces Alice and marries Trina. He only did it to escape statutory charges because she's pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. So, and she's the only witness. So, and you know, I don't know about now, but back then, like, a wife didn't have to testify against her husband.
That's still the case. I forget what it's
and
called,
he's
but it's
literally
like
been grooming her since she was 12.
wow.
You know.
So I know that I'm very familiar with the fact that married couples never have to testify against each other. That's something that's come up in a lot of like kind of high profile court cases over the past. But what I'm not familiar with is the fact that you can use that to avoid statutory charges. I did not know that.
Yeah, well, a lot of states in the South have really horrifically, I think in 12 is the age of consent or like marriage. You can get married as young as 12 in Florida. Not surprised, but yeah.
Yeah, this is something I watched. I don't want to say who, because last time I said who it was, I was wrong. I had said that I had watched something from Jordan Klepper, but it was actually Andrew Callahan from No Gas, No Breaks. But I did edit that into the video so people would know. But I was watching somebody talk about the fact that in the U.S. we have some of the most lax. I don't know if that feels like the wrong word here. Like the age of legal marriage is super, super low in a lot of places. The only like thing that you have to do is have parental permission. And so in a lot of states in the U.S., it's perfectly legal to, for instance, marry a 12-year-old as long as there's permission from her parents. And
that's gross. Have you guys ever met a 12-year-old? They're fucking cringe as fuck.
Yeah, and
I raised 3 kids.
Yeah.
And middle schoolers are cringy. Like, why would you want to marry one?
Yeah. Well, and also this is that's one way in which the U.S. Has a huge human trafficking problem. A lot of young girls end up married off to people against their will, and that contributes to human trafficking. And it's really messed up. Like, people don't realize that there is a lot of that going on in the U.S. Yeah.
No. People get shocked when they realize that we have like starving children, a lot of trafficking.
Yeah.
You know, in some states it's perfectly legal to rape your wife. Yep. So yeah, back to this story, because guess what? It gets worse.
Oh no, it's already so bad.
Yeah, it gets way worse before it gets even okay.
Oh my God. Okay, let's hear it.
16 days, that's 2 weeks, 2 days after Trina gives birth, her and Alice, the second wife, they flee to Trina's parents' house. Now, this is according to court records. McElroy tracked them the fuck down, brought them back. When Trina's parents were away, McElroy went to their home, where he once again burned down their house and shot their new dog.
So look, this guy did a lot of horrible stuff, but why kill the dog? All of it's horrible. All of it's horrible. All of it's horrible. Please do not misunderstand me. It is all horrible.
He's a fucking terrible person. That's why. Like, who does that?
Yeah.
Fucking psychopaths.
I feel like even terrible people who do terrible things still love dogs usually, because dogs are just like dogs. But like,
yeah,
you're gonna do all this horrible stuff and then put the cherry on top by killing the dog twice.
Burning down the house twice and killing the dog twice. Like, that's overkill, man.
That's super overkill. I just can't
like
imagine.
All of it's overkill. None of it is good.
No, it's all horrible. Like, please do not misunderstand us. The dog is not more important than the human beings harmed in this story. It's just, it adds a certain level of incomprehensibleness. Like, people hurt people, and that's something we're used to. But when people hurt animals who are defenseless and nothing but furry balls of love, like, that adds this layer of, like, just incomprehension. Like, it's so beyond bizarre and overkill, like you said. I mean, it's just crazy, like, to do all of this stuff and then be like, and I'm gonna kill your dog too. Like, the one comfort you had left in this horrible life I've created for you, I'm gonna take that too. And it's just like, jeez, what?
Yeah.
I just can't even, I can't even imagine the kind of mindset that a person like that has to commit such acts of violence against such young women, to destroy whole houses, and to murder innocent creatures that don't even understand what's happening. Like, Jesus, I can't imagine. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm ranting. Continue.
No, it's fine. There's more bad stuff.
Oh,
okay.
no.
So, in more bad news, so based on Trina's story, because remember, those were according to the court documents,
Right.
she like went to the police, and McElroy, he gets indicted in June of 73 for like arson, assault, statutory rape. He was arrested, booked and arranged, and then released on $2,500 bail. Trina and the baby were placed in foster care because remember, she's only 14.
Right.
She's only 14 and she's not safe at her parents' house. So she's placed in foster care, like over in Maryville, Missouri, which is a few towns over. And this motherfucker sits outside the foster home for hours at a time. He just stares at it. And he tells the foster family, I'll trade you a girl for a girl. I know where your daughter goes to school. Her bus stop. Like, yeah.
What does he even mean by
so
trade
they
you?
filed charges against McElroy because he threatened to kidnap their daughter.
Oh.
Their biological daughter. He was like, I know where she goes to school. I know her bus route.
Oh my God.
Uh-huh. So, they file charges because they ain't fucking playing around, right?
Good.
Like, so, then in July of 76, right? So that was back in 73. And then in July of 76, a Skidmore farmer, his name is Romaine Henry. He said McElroy shot him twice with a shotgun after Henry challenged him for shooting weapons on Henry's property. Well, he was charged with assault with intent to kill. He denied that he was at the scene. The case was dragged on without a court date. Henry said McElroy had parked outside his home at least 100 times. At the trial, 2 raccoon hunters testified that they were with McElroy the day of the shooting from Henry's property. Henry was forced to admit in court under questioning by McElroy's attorney that he had concealed his own petty criminal conviction for more than 30 years previous, so McElroy was acquitted. So he had these people come in and say, oh, no, he was hunting with us. And then he had his lawyer be like, you are a criminal as well. Why are you pointing fingers? And so the case just got thrown out, pretty much. Okay.
Jeez. There are so many things I want to unpack about that part.
Yeah, like there's just
like
no justice.
So and also this is so complex because there's so many factors at play here. One is the obvious one, I think, is that the justice system is failing to do something about this man who is doing horrible things and committing horrible crimes and hurting people in the community and causing suffering within his community, right? They're failing to convict him. They're failing to imprison him. They're leaving him to continue destroying people's lives. Additionally, though, there is this other factor. I'm sorry, I'm like tapping my desk and it's making my camera shake because I'm really like amped about this because it's like so upsetting. So the other factor that's at play here is the stigma against a petty criminal causing that person's testimony to be devalued, right? Like, we're talking about someone who is causing harm, getting off because of a stigma against a lesser criminal, right? And like, that's the marriage of like some of the biggest and most glaring problems with our justice system in this country. And they're happening at the same time, which I feel like you don't always get this like crystal clear example of those things intersecting to cause issues. But like, wow, what a perfect example of how marking petty criminals as deviants in our society can actually prevent real justice from happening for victims of actual horrible crimes. I'm sorry. I'm so upset about this story because that plays out in our society on a daily basis. Like, that intersection of those two issues with our justice system play out on a daily basis in especially, like, you know, we've talked about this, I live in Oakland, California, in, you know, like a not great neighborhood, and I will tell you right now that the intersection of perceiving petty criminals as deviants, as criminals in general, as bad people, stops them from getting the help they need from the justice system when there is an actual violent person hurting them all the time, especially where I live. People, you know, like, they can't even call the police because they've got a warrant for missing a court date for a speeding ticket, right? But they have a domestic abuser banging on their door about to bust it in and beat the crap out of them, and they can't even call the police for help. You know, that is like a daily occurrence, right?
Yeah, and it's awful.
And that's exactly what happened in this case you're telling me about. This guy could have been put away, and I know you're about to tell me more horrible shit he did after this, and all of that could have been prevented if they had just not looked at this guy who was offering his testimony as nothing more than a criminal. Wait, I don't hear you anymore.
Okay.
Can't hear me? Yep, now I do. I think maybe it just wasn't picking you up.
Oh, that's weird. You can hear me just fine now?
Yeah, I can hear you better now.
Okay. That was weird.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're going to kind of flash forward to 1980.
Okay, how many years are we skipping there?
We are skipping, what was the last year that I said? 1976.
When the court date, or when the court thing happened.
Yeah, so we're popping up into 1980. That's 4 years. 4 years after. So one of his children gets into an argument with a clerk. Her name was Evelyn Sumi at a local grocery store owned by 70-year-old Ernest Bowenkamp and his wife Lois, allegedly because the young McElroy child tried to steal some candy. So guess what his dad did? He began stalking the Bowenkamp family and eventually threatened Bo Bowenkamp in the back of his store with a shotgun in his hand. In the ensuing confrontation, McElroy shot Bowenkamp in the neck. Bowenkamp survived. Yeah, fucking survivor. But McElroy was arrested and charged with attempted murder, finally.
Finally.
Sorry, I feel like I might sneeze.
It's okay.
So he was convicted at trial of assault. He was freed on bail pending his appeal. Immediately after being released, McElroy went to the D&G Tavern, a local bar, with an M1 Garand rifle with a bayonet attached and made graphic threats about what he would do to Bo. This led to several patrons deciding to see what they could legally do to prevent McElroy from harming anyone else. Like, they were fucking done.
Yeah.
So his appeal hearing was delayed. On the morning of July 10th, 1981, townspeople met at the Legion Hall in the center of town with the county sheriff, Dan Estes, to discuss how to protect themselves. They were just like, we need to figure something out. This has gone on long enough. This guy he's a menace, you know, like, we need to fucking do something. So the sheriff was there, and during the meeting, McElroy arrived, and he has Trina in tow, his wife, and he's drinking at the bar, And word gets back to the men at the town hall that uh, he's in town. And Sheriff Estes instructed the assembled group not to get into a direct confrontation. At least that's what he says. He's probably like, watching his own back, which I don't blame him, But instead, he told them to seriously consider forming a neighborhood watch program. Ew, that's lame.
Mm-hmm.
Estes then drove out of town in his police cruiser. He left. How convenient. Which
Mm-hmm.
is fine, once again, which is fine. Because the citizens at the meeting then decided to go to the tavern together as like, pitchforks and fucking torches. Like they were gonna go, dude. They were fucking gone.
Mm.
Um, so the bar filled completely, and McElroy finished his drinks. He purchased a six-pack of beer and entered his pickup truck. While sitting in his truck, McElroy was then shot several times, only hit twice. Once by a center fire rifle and once by a .22 rimfire rifle. So in all, there was 46 potential witnesses to the shooting, including Trina McElroy, who was in the truck with her husband when he was shot. So she could have potentially been shot too, which sucks. But, because once again, Trina's the sacrificial lamb, you know?
Poor
Like,
Trina.
poor Trina. I kind of feel bad for her, because like I said,
Yeah,
she was literally groomed since she was a child. She's
absolutely.
she's a victim here. Um, so he gets shot. No one fucking calls an ambulance. They're like, fuck this guy. He could bleed out,
Not even
you know.
Trina.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, like we'll note that not even Trina called an ambulance.
Good for her.
Like, yeah. Um, Trina claimed to identify a gunman. Every other witness was either unable to name an assailant or claimed to not have seen who fired the fatal shots.
Mm-hmm.
But there was obviously multiple shooters.
Mm.
They totally like um what is the word I'm looking for? I'm having one of my infamous brain fogs. Um where they stand in a line and they all shoot you at once.
Oh,
Um
like a what
Firing
is it?
squad.
Yeah, that's it. Firing squad.
They
Yes.
totally like fire squatted his ass. And
Okay.
yep. And the DA totally was like, well, I'm not going to press charges. And extensive federal investigations did not lead to any charges either. So some of the townspeople were like, he needed killing. They were done. So the
Okay.
aftermath, yep, McElroy is buried at Memorial Park Cemetery in St. Joseph, Missouri on July 9th, 1984. I was 3 months old. Trina McElroy filed a $5 million wrongful death lawsuit against the town of Skidmore.
Hmm.
Um, against the sheriff, Estes, and of Del Clement, who Trina claimed of being the shooter but was never charged. So, and they later settled out of court for like $17,000 with
I'm
no one admitting guilt.
I mean, honestly, that's probably for the best because she probably really needed some money to get by. Like, I'd imagine she probably didn't have a lot of work experience, and it was probably a very
She dropped out of
traumatic.
school
Yeah,
as a
exactly.
freshman.
And it was probably very
Oh,
traumatic. I hope that that money helped her at the time, because, like you said, she was a victim.
yeah.
Man.
She eventually remarried. She moved to Lebanon, Missouri, and she did end up passing away in 2012 on her 55th birthday of cancer.
Oh, that's so sad. Oh, she never got a break in life.
No, no, she really didn't, and that's the story of the idiot asshole Ken McElroy.
I really hope that Trina was happy with her second husband and that he treated her well and that she
I
had a
hope
good
he was
life.
good to her. Yep, and I hope he didn't assault her in any way.
Yeah.
She learned peace, and I hope that for all of his ex-wives,
Yeah.
yeah, and the women that he, because there was a couple, he had a couple of conviction, like he was just not a good person. He was
Yeah.
a really bad person. He was a mad dog, and it, especially in the South, what do you do with a mad dog? You
Right.
put him down. And so, when I think of justice, I think of this town taking justice into their own hands in the only way they know how. Like they just had the fuck enough.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it's a
mean,
really interesting story. It just makes you so goddamn mad.
yeah, that is enraging. It's
And
enraging, and it's
and
frustrating.
like, you know, whenever I listen to like true crime podcasts, I'm always like, man, no wonder more and more people are like, fuck the police, because you hear all the stupid shit that goes on, and how they fuck up and don't communicate with one another, don't believe the victims, don't listen to leads, or they get a theory stuck in their head and nothing else is right, or they just like have everything in front of them but still don't pursue it, like. And I get there's human error and whatnot, but like also like, come on now. It's
Mm,
literally your job to serve and protect. What the fuck are you guys doing?
for real.
Jacking each other off. Like,
Seriously.
yeah.
And it's so frustrating because the justice system seems like it's always inserting itself where it doesn't need to be and nowhere to be found when it's needed. And I know that that's, kind of a simplification of it, but that is how a lot of people in this country feel about the justice system in general, and look at this story. People had to take things into their own hands. I mean, maybe had to is not the right language. Maybe they chose to, but what were their other choices? I think they made the best choice they could for themselves at the time, because what are you going to do? Let this person who is doing so much harm and causing so much suffering, are you going to let them continue to terrorize you and your entire town, and your entire family, and all your loved ones? How do you deal with that, other than what they
Rise
did?
up and get justice for their own, you
Exactly.
know? And I would like to start seeing that more often. Not necessarily like the vigilante, like let's go, shoot them all dead, but like if if the justice system is not going to give us the justice that we need and deserve, then by God, we're gonna fucking take it,
Yeah.
you know? And that's what happens in groups of people. But then also, like, I see like a lot of modern day cases that still don't have justice. Hashtag Breonna Taylor.
Mm.
Mm, you know,
I mean, that's such a
and
good point. And, I want to draw a connection to, while we're on that topic in particular, um, you know, the that story you just told. I think that a lot of people from very different sides of the political spectrum can get
mm,
behind that concept of mob justice when it's needed, right? And the interesting thing about that is that the those people on, completely opposite sides of the spectrum, they use mob justice and then condemn other people for using mob justice. And I don't want to mince words here. I'm really talking about like the try that in a small town types, right? You say try that in a small town, that implies that you will harm someone if they come into your community and don't act the way that you expect them to, right? If they come into your community and harm people you love, well, you're going to harm them back. That is exactly what try that in a small town implies. And yet, you can't understand why someone who looks different than you might do the same thing and react the same way. Like, when we're talking about the Breonna Taylors and the George Floyds and because it is a very long
Do have
list.
another story that's the flip side of that.
Oh, interesting. Well, let me just
Yeah.
say this first before you get into it. Like, when a person of color is murdered and there is outrage, it is so ironic to me that the people who claim try that in a small town don't understand that outrage. And it reads to me as incredibly and obviously racist, because there is the difference is that the justice is even more skewed against the people of color's community, right? Like the black community, the brown community, and other marginalized communities, the LGBT community, right? Like, justice is skewed even more against the marginalized people, and yet those with privilege who still believe in mob justice can't understand why someone is upset that someone from their community was unjustly killed like that. So I would love to hear your next story.
Okay. This is more of a mystery, not necessarily a true crime, but that's heavily debated. I'm going to
Oh,
talk to you about the death of Tamla Horsford.
okay.
Does that sound familiar at all?
No, I have no idea who that is. Should I
Okay,
know?
so this is, well, you will hear in a minute. You will know.
Okay.
And you'll probably be like, actually, I did hear this because this happened back in 2018.
Oh, okay.
She was discovered dead in the backyard of a home where she had been attending a slumber party with other football moms.
Oh.
She was 40 years old and she was a mom of 5. So her cause of death is disputed.
Really?
Um, yep, yep. So the Forsyth County Sheriff Department initially ruled the death as an accident, stating that multiple blunt force injuries were related to Horsford likely falling from the balcony due to acute ethanol intoxication. So they're saying she got drunk, fell from the balcony, and died.
Okay.
A second autopsy requested by her family revealed further abrasions to her body. The family attorney also stated that lack of evidence, types of injuries discovered, mismatched witness accounts strongly suggested homicide. In 2019, um, the the sheriff's office announced that the case would be closed and that there was no evidence of foul play. Um, so Miss Horsford, sorry, was a black woman, and all of the other women were white. She was the only black woman at this slumber party. Um, it actually didn't even really like pick up, um, like it didn't really pick up until like 2 months after her death. That's when the story kind of gained traction. But here's like what we know of the events. Because all these women are claiming like ignorance, they don't know anything. And yeah, and it's just kind of like weird. And also, like, once again, for all these white people, the sheriff's office is like, oh, I'll look the other way. You know what I mean? Like this. Anyways, here, we'll get into it. So she arrives at the slumber party at 10 p.m., November 3rd, 2018. The attendees drank, they watched football, they played Cards Against Humanity. There was also 3 men in the house. According to witnesses, Horsford got up at 2 a.m., smoked a cigarette on the back porch. The next morning at 7:30 a.m., the homeowner's aunt found Horsford lying face down and motionless underneath the porch. At 8:59 a.m., the homeowner's boyfriend called 911. Yep. She's found at 7:30 a.m. At 8:59 a.m., they called 911.
Why? What is their reason for waiting so long?
Right? Um, he said that she's lying face down, she's not breathing. He brought attention to a small cut on her wrist, suggesting that it may be self-inflicted. A woman's voice during the call, a woman's voice could be heard on the call speculating that Horsford might have fallen off the balcony.
Forsyth County 911.
Hi, yes. I need an ambulance and the police to my home.
Okay, what's going on?
We had people over last night. We were drinking. Most of us went to bed. One of them stayed on the balcony. She was drinking, and we just went outside, and she's laying face down in the backyard. It looks like I'm guessing maybe she fell off the balcony, but she's stiff.
Okay, is she breathing?
I don't know if she's face down.
Okay, how old is she?
At 41. Here, hold on.
Hey, have y'all checked to see if she's breathing?
She's not moving one bit. She's not breathing.
Okay.
I just try to assess her, touch her. She's completely face down in the yard. She is stiff.
Okay. Do you know if she, do you see any blood or anything from where she fell?
I don't know if I should move her over. I mean, she is completely face down.
Okay. I mean, can you just check and see if she's breathing? If she's not breathing and you know she's gone, then just leave her where she's at. If she, okay. Do you know if she was at all?
I have no clue. I've met her one other time. Like my girlfriend said, people were over last night. She was her birthday party. We're not the woman that we believe to be deceased, but it's my girlfriend's birthday party. Instead of having everybody go out, she had everyone stay in. And she was the last one I saw before everybody was typically put off to bed. And she was the last one in the kitchen. She was just either waiting around for a ride or waiting until the morning.
Okay.
And the police arrived at 9:07. So the police got there in 8 minutes, which isn't bad.
Okay, yeah.
So the initial autopsy ordered by the sheriff's office discovered multiple blunt force injuries and high blood alcohol levels. So she was drunk. Officials speculated that the latter caused her to fall from the porch and that the injuries were a result of the 14-foot fall.
14 foot. Oof.
Her friends and family, however, were not fucking convinced. They called for a second independent autopsy, and that was carried out by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. According to the GBI medical examiner's report, Horsford sustained severe injuries to her head, neck, and torso. And they discovered cuts on her face, wrist, hand, and lower legs, as well as lacerations to the right ventricle of her heart. So her heart got fucked up. The toxicology screening found a blood alcohol level of 0.238 and traces of THC and an anxiety medication as well. Even before the results of the autopsy, speculation of foul play had begun to spread online. So people are all it's one black woman at the slumber party full of white women, and why did they wait so fucking long to call 911? And why is the fucking sheriff's office being so fucking nonchalant about it? You know what I mean? I'm sorry, but if you discovered her at this time and then waited over an hour to call the fucking police,
Yeah.
What are you hiding?
Yeah.
What are you cleaning up?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just don't fucking buy it. I just don't fucking buy it. So the sorry, I lost my place on my notes. I just want to make sure I get the facts right, because it's such a weird fucking case,
Yeah.
So there is a hashtag like online. If you follow the hashtag Tamla Horsford, it talk like the hashtag like on Twitter, Facebook, anywhere really, and you hashtag her first and last name, it will pop up like different angles on what people speculate, is going on with the case, because there's a lot of different speculation. But once again, it was officially closed February 20th, 2019, was ruled as an accidental death. Um, he stated that none of Horsford's injuries aligned with foul play, saying it was a party. They were drinking. She was drinking. Most of the partygoers had gone to bed at that time, and she was on the deck alone. He had interviewed 30 people, and was like, no one is of interest. So,
No one, really.
yep,
Not the people who
yep.
waited an hour and a half to call for 911.
So it actually faded from the public eye. And then 2020 happened, George Floyd, and the protests happened, and that actually kind of like made the case pick up again.
Wow.
And June 5th, 2020, the family attorney wrote a letter to Horsford's husband claiming that his team's investigation into the details of the case strongly suggested homicide. It said, in part, witness statements are in conflict. A potential subject handled the body as well as the evidence prior to law enforcement arriving. Evidence was disposed of and no inquiry followed. The scene was not preserved. He also stated that Horsford's injuries were consistent with those of a physical struggle, but that the absence of photos from the initial autopsy prevented a definite conclusion. An Atlanta journalist published the letter a few days later. The name and case spread across the internet, starting with protesters in Cummings, Georgia, who included her name on their signs alongside the name of Black Americans killed by the police in recent years. Change.org petition called for the case to be reopened and amassed more than 709,000 signatures, including rapper T.I., 50 Cent. They shared posts about the cases. They were asking for a second investigation. And June 12th, 2020, the sheriff sent a letter requesting that the case be reopened and investigated by the GBI. He stated that the investigation was best undertaken by an independent law enforcement agency. The GBI agreed to reopen the case June 18th, 2020, but did not specify when the investigation would begin. On July 28th, 2021, the GBI concluded their reinvestigation, ultimately deciding not to pursue charges. So there is still no justice for her.
Wow.
Yeah. So I personally think, this is all speculation for legality's sake. This is all speculation. But I speculate that someone got drunk and rowdy and she didn't like it and probably like pushed her off the fucking back porch. Yeah.
I mean, Jesus.
She didn't get a fair investigation.
No.
Look, if it was a white woman in a house full of black women and that had happened, they would have all been arrested that night.
Yeah.
And that's not right either.
No.
And I'm not asking for all those white women to get arrested that night, but like at least fucking investigate, because once again, where's the investigation?
Seriously.
How is it 2018 and you didn't fucking preserve the crime scene?
Yeah, that makes no sense to me. That makes
No.
no sense to me.
And you hear about this shit still happening to this fucking day. Do your goddamn job.
For real.
If I go to work and I fuck up my job, I lose my job.
Yep.
Do your job. Investigate crimes better. Fucking preserve the goddamn crime scene. And I get that it's mostly rookies that show up first. Okay, that's fine. Train their dumbasses to preserve the crime scene.
Yeah, I'm sorry, is that not step one when there's a death? Like,
okay, so back in the day, like when homicides would happen, okay, like the Visalia axe murders, let's like take that for instance.
Sure.
Over 400 people walked through that crime scene. The entire town held the murder weapons that day to look at it and take pictures.
Murder
Yeah.
tourism. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing right now.
Okay, but yes, but okay, like back then, like people would like take pieces of crime scenes or disaster scenes. Like, yeah, they would like take pieces and stuff. That way they could just be like, I have a piece in the Lizzie Borden house, you know, like, yeah.
Man, I mean, I guess it's better that we, you know, that doesn't happen anymore, but it would be even better if we could also, like, you know, actually investigate.
Bro, it absolutely still happens.
What? Seriously? People, like, take pieces of crime scenes?
Yeah, bro.
That's weird.
It is weird. But, you know, like, people still have morbidities like that, you know? People still, like, collect shit like that. Look at Zach Bagans. You know, he's got that haunted museum in Las Vegas, and I think he's got Ted Bundy's fucking bug. Like, you know, like, yeah, he has a bunch of, like, murder apparel.
I mean,
You
look,
know, you can buy Pogo the Clown's paintings, and same with Charles Manson.
I'm fine with that. It's a little weird when it, like, goes kind of far. But I understand morbid tourism. Like, we're sitting here on a podcast talking about some true crime stuff that happened. Like, you know, that is one thing. But, like, walking through an active crime scene and just, like, picking up some evidence and putting it in your pocket is, like, I'm sorry, what?
Old-timey shit.
Yeah. That is a little crazy to me. And you know, I do get morbid curiosity 100%. It's why we're sitting here talking about this, because we both have a pretty strong sense of morbid curiosity and morbid fascination. And I think that's why people talk about this a lot. But I think also, just to full circle it and tie it all up in a bow right here, is I think the reason people also are interested in these kind of stories, it goes beyond just the morbid fascination and into this very strong need for feeling justice at work and understanding how justice works and crying out for justice, right? Like, we, especially in America, like, you know, the preamble of the Constitution, I'm pretty sure, has a line about, like, justice, right? Like, it's written all over the Constitution. Justice, 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 right? Like, we Americans are fascinated with how justice works and how it's achieved and how it should be and how it shouldn't be. And I think that's why a lot of these topics are really popular. And I also think that's why like the BLM movement, what a cutie. I think that's why the Black Lives Matter movement was as strong as it was in 2020, because people were hungry for justice. You know, like, we are so tired as a nation of seeing injustices happen and the lack of a justified response, you know, like, or vice versa. Like, you know, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane to me that we can let Black and brown people be killed and do nothing. And even when we as a people, like, as the nation of citizens, try to do something, the justice system is just like, nah. How does that happen?
Has to for a societal collapse.
I mean, I kind of agree. I know.
No, historically we're over 200. We're over the 250 mark, and historically that's about where societies average at before they actually collapse and have to be reformed. So we're actually past due.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. I feel that. I think that if we could just start over, it would be painful but helpful. Like,
yeah,
I think things would be better if we could just, shake the Etch-a-Sketch that is America and
oh, that's
redo
so
it.
funny. Get out of my brain. I was just thinking that. Etch-a-Sketch. I totally was thinking like Love Guru. Etch-a-Sketch.
Yeah. Just shake it up and redo it,
Mm-hmm.
Man, and since we're on the topic already of Black Lives Matter and all of the many people who have been killed or harmed by not just police, but also, if we look at all the people who died during the Black Lives Matter protests, the majority of them were either killed by police fire, like it is usually considered less than lethal fire. People died from that. They were also killed by counter protesters who wanted to protest against the Black Lives Matter movement. And they were also killed by shop owners who deemed that their property was more valuable than the people's lives who they killed during the protests. And like a lot of people say, well, and I know you've heard this too, because something that's interesting, a little side note to this conversation, something that's interesting about the people we kind of grew up with is that a lot of them became very different than us politically. And I have heard a lot of people talk about like, the Black Lives Matter protesters are unjustified in their actions, right? The looting, the property destruction, the kind of reactionary violence of a protest. They're saying, there's people who say this is unjustified, but I personally think that responding to violence with violence is a very human thing to do. It's very human, and responding to centuries of systemic oppression with a protest where you set a few trash cans on fire and loot a few stores is pretty rational response, right?
I think so, because look, I've been saying eat the rich for a long time here. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you rather just a few places get looted? I mean, wait till we start actually eating the rich.
For real.
Then you're gonna wish for those trash can fires.
And we're talking about people being murdered by the system. Mm-hmm. And you think that the response to that being that a few stores get looted during the protests, that's unjustified? I'm sorry, but if you sit here and tell me that looting a few stores during a protest is unjustified in the face of people being murdered in cold blood by the system, your racism is showing. Like, yeah. If you value stuff and money more than human lives, I am asking why. If you think that the property owners whose stores got smashed up and looted have more of a right to protect their property than the Black community has to protect their human fucking beings, why? Why do you think that? Because it's wrong. You're wrong. You're just wrong. And like...
Can't hear that thumping, can you?
What?
You can't hear the thumping, can you?
No, what's thumping? Is it our ghost friend that keeps interrupting our podcast?
No, it's fucking Icus's tail. He's like laying next to me and his tail is wagging hitting the floor. But it's so really cute. Loud too, so I'm like...
I cannot hear it. We're all good.
Okay, good. Like, this dog.
It's another thing that I've heard people we grew up with say.
What?
That white privilege isn't real. Let's talk about that for a second.
They only think that because they're poor, so they don't see the same privileges as upper classes do, and they
Right.
can't differentiate between their race and their class.
Exactly. Yeah, I think something that I've tried to explain to some of these folks who grew a different direction than us politically is that there's a difference between class oppression and racial oppression. And both can exist at the same time, but also they can be separate. And that really comes down to intersectionality, right? The the whole concept of intersectionality is that we all face different systemic forms of oppression, and we all have different privileges within that same system as well. And so, like, you know, for example, I am white, and that is a privilege that I have in our society that favors white skin. And I am a gay woman, and that is a way that society marginalizes me and oppresses me, right? I'm never going to have to worry about, if I call the cops, are they going to show up and murder me because of the color of my skin? That is not something I personally have to ever worry about. But when we were homeless, it wasn't out of the question that calling the cops could end in violence against us because of our place in the class system, right? Like, being poor and being homeless placed us at the very bottom of the class system. And so we did have to worry, if we call the cops because there's someone trying to harm us, are the cops going to show up and actually harm us? It's not exactly the same, but it is a similar experience. And so when people we grew up with, like, that were also homeless with us, or homeless around the same time as us, who are white, they grow older and they say, I don't believe in white privilege. The wokeists are trying to tell me I need to feel guilty for being white. What I try to tell them is, like, look, you don't have a lot of privilege because of how you've grown up and how you have faced extreme poverty, but you do have white privilege. That doesn't mean life's not hard for you. It just means that no cop is going to show up and shoot you in the face because you're white. That's not how
And they
it
go,
works.
la 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 la, that's not true, you are woke. La, 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 la.
A lot of them
And
do
also,
that, but I
can I
have...
just say that all these people who use the term woke are the same idiots that also say things like, wake up, sheeple.
I know. Like, come on.
Choose a lane.
Pick a lane. Pick a lane. You need to pick a phrasing and stick with it. You can't be like, oh, woke is bad, but also wake up. Like, you need to pick. They mean the same thing. You need to pick.
Yeah, choose. Well, see, look, I am beginning to think more and more that they must be illiterate because they also claim they don't use pronouns.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think...
Could you imagine a sentence
without a pronoun?
without pronouns?
Right.
You sound like caveman. You know?
Sound like caveman. Yeah.
Sound like caveman.
I mean, you'd only be able to use names only, or a lack of personal noun completely. Like, it makes no linguistic sense to not use pronouns. Pronouns have existed forever. What they really mean is, I'm not going to use the pronoun you would like to be used in reference to you, which is super, super dumb because why?
Yeah.
Because you just want to be a dick? Why? Like, I'm sorry. What? Like, if I like she, her pronouns. I've always been referred to as she, her, and I've always felt comfortable with that. If someone tells me, I feel yucky when I hear that pronoun in reference to myself. I don't like the way it feels inside when someone says she, her about me. I would prefer he, him, or they, them. Why on earth would I deny them feeling better about how our conversation goes. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense. And also, dear conservatives, please don't use the Bible because, like, as a shield, because even Jesus said in John 18:6, I am he.
Yeah, it's a pronoun.
That's a pronoun, by the way. His pronouns were he, him.
Yeah, and he declared it.
He declared it.
If he was
John
alive,
18:6, people.
yeah, if he was still alive today, or reborn perhaps, I don't know. If he was around today, he'd have his pronouns in his Twitter bio. I'm just saying. Like
Yes, and also if Jesus was alive today, all of those people would hate his ass and call him woke.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was very woke. Like, if we really get into it, so you know a lot about the Bible. I also, like, read the whole freaking Bible multiple times. Jesus was woke as shit, dude. Like,
Bro.
he was like, fuck the bankers, feed
He
the poor.
hung out with sex workers and thieves.
Yeah, he was super woke, super left, and it's so weird how, like, I think you're onto something about the illiterate thing, because I think that if Christians and people who believe in the Christian God and in Jesus Christ, you know, if those folks really actually read the Bible and, like, really actually paid attention to the New Testament and the story of Jesus, it would be very hard for them to justify their actions and their positions and their ideals, because they are very, especially in America, because the majority of the people who outwardly express how much they love Jesus are not living up to his teachings. Are you talking? I can't hear you again.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember this one because look, here the thing about the Bible. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
The thing about the Bible is it is also you know, it is also very
Interpretive.
well, you know, so the Bible is very back and forth. You know, when it comes to, like, love your neighbor and love yourself and be good to one another, then you get passages like Psalms 137:9. Happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones.
Right.
You know.
Is that the Old Testament or the New Testament, though? I can't remember.
It's Psalms. I think Psalms is the New Testament. I can't remember.
I don't think so. I think that everything that's the New Testament is just the 4 books of John, Luke, Paul.
Isaiah 13:16. Their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses shall be spoiled and their wives ravished.
I'm going to look up what is the Old Testament and what is the New Testament. Because
Numbers 31:17. Kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman that hath known man by lying with him.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
And I mean, like, I could honestly go on and on and on. Like, in Matthew, you know, we have the tale of King Herod, and then Amos, Hosea. Like, there's so many. Exodus has a bunch of passages, and those are just the passages about killing children. There's so many. There's this one really rad TikToker. I can't remember his name, but he's this artist, and he takes Bible passages and turns them into horror art. And it's pretty awesome and scary at the same time. But you know, like, the Bible is very interpretive, and unfortunately, you know, it was written and rewritten over thousands and thousands of years. So the versions that people have these days they're not the correct version. They have the church has even confirmed that they've taken parts out of the Bible,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
And
and also, like, okay, so I took a Bible as literature course in college, and one of the coolest things about it was we didn't just read the Bible, we also learned about the history of the Bible. And something that I think a lot of people don't realize is that what we have as both Old Testament and New Testament was a collection of stories selected out of uh, a huge pool of many more stories, and all of them were just written by people. Like, nobody who wrote, no person who actually wrote any of the pieces of the Bible was a witness to any of the stories they wrote. And that's very important that people do not understand that. None of the stories in the Bible, from Old Testament to New Testament, including Apocrypha, none of them were written by actual witnesses to those stories. Not a single one. All of them were submitted as part of a collection of submissions, right? All of them were submitted to the church, and from those submissions, they pulled the ones they liked best. That's why the books about Jesus, and this is something also I feel like you can instantly tell if someone has actually read the Bible or if they're just talking about how much they love the Bible, when you ask them about the stories of Jesus, because there's 4 stories of Jesus in the Bible that are different stories, and they're not chronological. They don't consistently match each other. They are contradictory and very interpretive. And each one is a whole different story about Jesus. And the church decided, you know what, we like these ones. We're going to include these, and people can figure it out.
well, that's the thing also is, you know, for the public didn't have access to the Bible. It was illegal for commoners to read the Bible for the longest time. And then when it finally was legal, it was illegal for slaves to read. And then when the slaves were freed and they were allowed to read, they actually had slave Bibles that had the stories of the slaves being freed taken out of the Bible.
Right.
You know, they didn't want Black people to know about that was a thing that you could do, you know, which is so fucking, oh my God, the things white people have done.
Right.
And I know, I get it, dear listener. I am a white people myself, but I still fucking point out what my fellow mayonnaise mixes have done.
Yeah.
You
I
know.
think my dogs are going to bark for a second. Let me mute myself so it's not too loud.
Yeah, I don't understand why we even really need to have organized religion. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like it brings on more wars than anything, don't you think?
Yes.
You know?
I mean, I think we already said in another episode that we feel like, you know, religion is probably the historically the greatest cause of war.
Well, you know, they use the Bible to justify slavery.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You know, and so it's just like nothing good ever came out of the Bible, in my opinion.
Well, and you know what the funny thing is? We're on the topic of justice, so this is super relevant, but you know, religion, organized religion, you know, it's kind of OG purpose is to create societal justice, right? To create an outline of how justice works and what is justice and what is justified. And today, it is the source of so much injustice. And I think that that's very, it's very sad. And it's also very telling about humanity in general, in my opinion. Like, it's interesting that something that was created to make a better, more peaceful world is now used to justify violence and war on a regular basis.
Historically has always used it to justify violence and war. King James took the Bible and bastardized it to his own version
Yeah.
to include "thou shalt not suffer a witch to live," so that way he could turn around and go after men and women and kill them.
Yeah, and let me clarify too. I'm not saying that I think Christianity or the Bible were created to create a more just world. I think there was a lot of other things going on with that. But just religion in general, right? Like organized religion in general.
I feel like a lot of, especially like ancient religions, were created because we didn't understand science and how things worked.
That too. It was
Yeah.
a lot of it was to explain the natural phenomenon that we can explain today through.
But personally, I think religion was created to control masses.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was true, honestly. I mean, I think also there's some truth to both of those ideas, right? Like that religion was created to create justice and also at the same time to control the masses, because when we are talking about legal justice, like systemic justice, is that about something other than controlling the masses?
Right.
Like that is kind of the purpose. If there were no systemic justice, it would be anarchy, right? And people would be a lot harder to control with no systemic justice in place. And that's why a lot of people like are really scared of calls to change the justice system. Like, it's funny because I was watching something today. I was kind of doing some soft prep for us to talk about this, and I was watching a video by a YouTuber who I really like, who makes great video essays. His name, if you would like to go check him out on YouTube, is F.D Signifier. FD Signifier. And I was watching this video that he made about police and the prison system, and one of the things he said that struck me as surprising was that, and he's a black man who is saying this, so I am kind of taking his word for it because I'm a white lady. I don't really know anything about it, but he said that most black folks don't know what ACAB even is, unless like a white liberal explains it to them. Like they're not in on the ACAB thing. That's like a white people thing. And I was surprised to hear that because I guess I just didn't know that. I didn't know that. And he was talking about like black folks have been talking about how awful the police are for way longer than anyone else in America since like the dawn of the country. And he like referred back to like
because the police was created in America to round up runaway slaves.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things he was talking
about.
That's
what our police force was founded on.
And it's so interesting to me though that I just didn't know that ACAB was kind of a white slogan. And I think even though it is, according to FD Signifier, a white slogan, I think, it means the same thing as what black people have been screaming at us for generations. Fuck the police, right? Like, it means the same thing. And what it really is getting at is that we want a change in how the justice system impacts the most marginalized people. That has to change. And a lot of people are so scared of that change because in their mind, they don't understand the difference between fixing a problem and getting rid of a problem, right? Like, I understand that ACAB is kind of hyperbolic, right? Like, it's a little hyperbolic. But it's also, like, super true. What's happening with the dog? Oh my goodness. Ickis, do you say ACAB? Or is he a bootlicker?
Yeah. No, dude, there's a video of him on TikTok going after cop dogs on the TV, and I have "Fuck the Police" playing behind it.
That is so funny. I love
It's
that.
pretty funny.
I love that.
But Ickis is my ACAB puppy.
Oh, good. But you know, I think it comes down to the fact that when we say defund the police, we say ACAB, we say fuck the police, we say all of these things, 90% or more, 99% of the people who say that understand that there still does have to be a justice system in place. We can't just throw away all community policing. We can't just throw away all forms of crime and punishment. We can't just, you know, have nothing in place.
Yeah.
But it's hyperbolic for a reason. We're saying the extreme because if we don't, no one will listen. And I think the Black community has seen that more than any other community because they've been faced with that reality the longest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to the most extreme destructiveness of their communities and their connection to culture and well-being, right? Like, so I just feel like that's where people get upset when they hear us say ACAB and they hear us say all these things, because they can't understand that the hyperbole has a purpose and is still hyperbole. We still understand that we need police. If you interview protesters on the street and say, do you think that there should never be any police? One guy might be like, yeah, no police of any kind ever, no replacement for them, nothing. The other 99 people you talk to are going to be like, you know, there are community solutions to this issue that involve less of the kind of police we have now and more of local, specially trained response teams, right? Like that
structure, like what we mean when we say ACAB is that the complete infrastructure of our justice system needs an overhaul.
Yeah. There's so many solutions, and honestly, people of color have been coming up with these solutions for generations and been ignored. And now
time to listen.
Well, and also it is frustrating because now it's like woke white liberals like us. I'm not trying to like we're not really liberals, we're leftists, but still
we're not liberals, yeah.
But yeah, we're not liberals, we're leftists, but still, like, you know, we are a type, right? We are like woke white women, you know what I mean? And people like us are finally speaking up about these issues. And now they're getting more traction, and that's frustrating, and it makes me upset. It makes me also invigorated to do my best and be as anti-racist as possible and be as loud about how things aren't working as much as I can. But it's also frustrating because I know that I just know that if I were sitting in the shoes of a person of color, having seen my grandparents fighting for civil rights and getting freaking nowhere, having seen how things still suck for people of color generations after slavery ended and how people are still being murdered, and then seeing like Kit and Ann on their podcast chatting about it, and it, you know, it that's frustrating. That's frustrating. And what can we do about that? It's very difficult because it's still important to speak out.
As white people, at least you and me right now, like what we could do is try our hardest to not be racist. Look,
yep. That's really
am I
the
racist?
main thing.
Yes. Sometimes I am racist. Is it out of hate or anger Nope. 100% out of ignorance. I don't always know because I was born and raised and still live in a predominantly white area. So I honestly don't always know. But that being said, as a person who understands that sometimes they may do or say or think something that is racist, I am always open to being told, hey, that's racist. This is why. And I go, oh, fuck, okay. And I learn from that thing.
Yeah.
And that is what you could do as a white person is like just
Be
live and
open.
learn and know that sometimes, especially, because you don't know, you're going to be racially ignorant. And that is a form of racism, and as long as you don't weaponize it and learn from it, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we're always learning, we're always trying to learn and be better and not be racist.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's why I'm
but
sitting
yeah,
here, trying to just grapple with like, what is my position in this world, in this system of, as a white person, like in this system of serious racial oppression, right? Like, where's my place in that? And is that even, does that even matter? Does it even matter where my place in that is? Maybe it doesn't, and like, okay, so I'm still here. The best thing for me to do is just work hard to be as anti-racist as possible, to be as open to
also
feedback
you
as
could
possible.
influence another white person to be as anti-racist as possible,
So
and that would matter in the grand scheme of things.
that is a very good point. And actually, can I talk about this a little bit? My thesis that I wrote for my
Yes,
MA.
yes.
Um, so my MA thesis was about, it was about a few things, but kind of the very simplified version of this like giant piece of writing that I did was about the interaction between the alt-right and the internet and memes, and um, from an angle of what can we do about it as like normal people on the internet who are afraid of the influence of these very hateful, racist, bigoted, homophobic, misogynistic people with these like very strong beliefs. And in my conclusion, I talk about like the method of radical compassion. And when I wrote this, I was very torn. Um, at the time, I graduated with my MA, so I finished my thesis around the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. So we are coming off of the big heat part of the Black Lives Matter movement that happened during 2020. And the response of the right, which was January 6th, I think, in my opinion, I think that those two things were very much related to each other. And so I had this idea in my head at the time, basically, fuck the alt-right. Catchphrase that I'm not going to necessarily, I am not going to personally promote violence on this show because I don't think that's good, but the catchphrase punch Nazis was definitely one that I thought was accurate, right? And it was a very hard pill for me to swallow when I did months of research, real statistics and studies about how you can change people's minds without turning them into martyrs, without making them double down on their beliefs. How can you stop the spread of dangerous rhetoric and beliefs? And the answer is radical compassion. And that was super, super tough for me to accept when I was writing this thesis because I don't want to be compassionate. But one of the things I realized is that as a white person, as someone who is not as much of a target, right? I'm still queer, so it depends on who I'm talking to. But like, it is one way that I believe I can use my white privilege in a positive way to speak with a white person who is hateful and use radical compassion to change their mind, because it's like a thoughts are a virus. And it doesn't matter if they're good beliefs or bad beliefs, they will spread. Especially, it's true. Wait, I can't hear you again. What'd you say?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what happened there. Have you seen Pontypool? You said thoughts are or words are a virus, and I was like, oh shit! It made me think of this like a zombie movie from Canada where
I
like
haven't seen
the
it.
virus is spread by words.
I mean, that is kind of
It's a
how
really good movie. I think it's a short story too.
that is really, that's the whole concept of a meme, right? If you look at the original definition of a meme, was it Dawkins? Was it Richard Dawkins? I can't believe I'm forgetting this now. I wrote a whole thesis on it. The guy who coined the meme word as what it is, his original definition is it's thoughts that spread like a virus. It's thoughts that spread like a virus. And whether you believe in loving everyone and not being hateful, or you believe that you are superior to others and that you hate other people, that thought can spread to other people. You just have to figure out how to send it. And the alt-right got really good at using the internet to spread their hate. And so
very impressive for a group of illiterate fucks.
I know, right? Well, it's the internet. And so I looked at how can we use the internet to undo that, to spread compassion. And the answer is having compassion for awful people. And like, one of the things I wrote about in the conclusion, this is what I was getting to, is that I would never want someone who is a target of these people to engage in that kind of praxis because it is not safe for them. So if we're talking about a Nazi who hates people of color, it is not the job or duty of a person of color to go change that man's mind. It's a white people's problem.
People's problem, but also mad props to the black man who like went and personally converted like how many KKK members?
A lot.
Like it was a fuck ton, and he did it all through the power of friendship.
Yeah.
He like befriended each and every one of them, and he like got like really big high ups leave the KKK because they were friends.
Yeah.
So mad props to him. He's a fucking legend.
He is such a ledge, and that's such a good example of someone putting radical compassion into action. And I call it radical because I think that it takes a very
hard pill to swallow. Like I'm sitting here, and I get what you're saying, but I'm still like, I'm gonna go punch a Nazi.
It's hard. It's
it's
very hard because we're talking about people who literally believe in things as extreme as genocide.
Yeah.
And to engage with that person compassionately hurts. It hurts. It's painful. For me, a white person, it is still painful to engage with someone with compassion when I know that person wants people I love to die. That's hard. And I don't expect, like, look, it's hard and it hurts, but also like at the same time, it is a problem that it's kind of my responsibility to deal with as someone who has the ability to deal with it and someone who is not directly affected by that hatred. It is my responsibility, and it's not like a favor I'm doing, right? It's not like a gift I'm giving. It is a burden that I have to carry if I want society to be a better place someday. It's not like, oh, look at me saving the day. No, it's a problem that is, I am part of that problem, and it is my duty to solve it. Not solve it. I wish I could solve it. It's my duty to put in whatever I can put in to help alleviate it. I wish I could solve it, but that's not going to happen overnight.
Big facts, but I'm not ready to be nice to people yet.
I know you're not.
Yeah, but I try. A little bit.
You know, since I wrote that thesis, I have been practicing radical compassion a lot more often. I won't say I'm perfect at it. Definitely not, because there are times, especially online, where somebody says some shit and I'm just like, you're a freaking horrible Nazi piece of fuck, you know? Like, it's hard. It's really freaking hard. But I do try to do it more, and I'll say this in a selfish way. I think it has improved my life in some ways, because I find that when I can give compassion to someone that I really despise, the compassion I have for people I love grows.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's true. Like, the more compassion I can give to people that are horrible, the bigger my level of compassion grows for the people in my life that I love. And that has had a big impact on my life. Yeah.
Maybe I should try it more.
Maybe it's hard, but it's worth doing. It's worth doing. And I don't see, okay, right now I'm just going to be honest with you. I feel like the way I'm explaining this gives white savior complex. And like I don't know how to express that. Like, I see that and I recognize it, and I still feel that this is the best course of action I can take. You know what I mean?
Okay, so you're just trying to be a good person and you're just trying to explain how you personally are a good person.
Yes.
It's not like you're trying to go out there and take credit. You're not Sandra Bullock. This
No.
isn't The Blind Side.
No, I'm not trying to pull a Sandra Bullock in The Blind Side, or, you know, it's not.
Oh, bro, but did you hear about all this shit that came out about that?
No, what happened?
I mean, I shouldn't be I'm only laughing because it's fucked up, dude, and like it's a nervous laugh. Okay, so the real family, they actually had tricked that poor man into a conservatorship and had been like taking his money, and he finally like came out and was like, these people are not my family. They never adopted me. They put me into a conservatorship to take my money. Uh-huh.
Oh, damn.
Oh yeah, it just like came out not too long ago. Like, this is fresh news.
That's crazy. I did not know about that. What?
Yeah,
Wow.
bro, they're like piece of trash people. Like, it's gotten so bad. Like, people are like, Sandra Bullock should give back her Oscar, and I'm like, no, she should keep her Oscar because she didn't lie about what she was doing. She acted.
She's just an
and
actress.
won.
She doesn't know anything about that.
All she did was win an award for how she acted with the script she was giving. Just because the person she was portraying is a piece of shit doesn't mean she should give back her award.
No, I don't think she should give back the award, but I do think giving her the award was like do better, Hollywood, you know? Just I'm just saying. And here's also the other thing I want to say about the white savior complex, because I think anytime a white person wants to help solve the systemic issues surrounding racism and racist oppression, anytime a white person wants to do something about that, it can easily be read as white savior complex. And here I think is where you have to ask yourself, what is my motivation, and how am I justifying my actions, right? We're talking about justice. So how do you justify what you are doing? And if there is any part of you that pities people of color, you might be doing it for the wrong reasons. I have nothing but respect for everyone I've ever called a friend in my life. And most of the people I've called acquaintances, I have a lot of respect for as well. And I never want anyone out there who might be watching us to think that I objectify them because of the color of their skin. I love you out there watching right now. And the reason I try to do things like radical compassion are multitudes of reasons, but it is because I'm disgusted by how hateful the world is. It is because there's no ounce of pity or like I do not see any of the people I am fighting for as monoliths, right? Like every individually deserves justice. And for me, what that means is they deserve the equality, the equity that every human being has a right to by virtue of being alive. So I think that that's what it comes down to. Like if you see people of color as one thing, like it's a thing you can put on the shelf, you might have bad motivations. You might need to reassess how you're thinking about a whole group of people. But if you are trying to do the right thing because you know it is right and because you respect everyone you've ever met from that walk of your life, like even if not everyone, I obviously I don't respect everyone I've ever met. Some people I've met are just dicks. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think on an individual level, I have never met anyone who doesn't deserve justice and respect and dignity within the system that we live under. Which brings us to an interesting point. I hope I'm not monopolizing our time. I know that I get like really intense about this.
We have a humanitarian sort of degree. You're fine.
Well, okay, so this is bringing me right to one of the other things we wanted to talk about, which was actually some stuff related to the work I do. And so something I just said is that I've never met a person, an individual, who didn't individually, in their own right, deserve justice and equality and good things, right? Even bad people. And so in my work, what is a bad person is a very nuanced subject because I work with people who have gotten out of prison after a really, really long time. A lot of the people I work directly with in my field of work are people who were serving life sentences and either got commuted or made parole after at least, I think, 25 years or at least 20 years. I can't remember exactly. I should know that, though. There's a minimum amount of years you have to serve if you get a life sentence, and then you can be up for parole.
I think it's 25.
Mm-hmm. But getting parole from a life sentence is not easy, right? And so a lot of these guys I work with, they are some of the most... reformed is not even the word. They're some of the most emotionally grown-up people I've ever met in my life. And they're some of the
They did a lot of shadow work on themselves,
exactly.
Right?
And they're some of the most good people I've ever met in my life. And look, I don't know... I don't seek out the information about their past. I don't seek out the information about their crimes. But they talk, a lot of these people talk about doing life sentences. And some of them, I'm sure, were like 3 strikers who got caught selling drugs too many times and had to do life on a 3rd drug charge, right? Because the 3 strikes rule like put a lot of people behind bars for life. But others are most certainly murderers. And they are some of the best people I've ever met. Hands down.
2 things can be true at once.
2 things can be true at once. And, it's so interesting to me how, like, we talked earlier. I was going somewhere with this train, and now I already am off the train, but let me wrap it around in a loop-de-loop. So earlier, we were talking about like this guy who was horrible and he deserved to be behind bars and he did all these terrible things, killing the family dogs, burning down the homes, marrying 12-year-olds, horrible, horrible, horrible. And he should have been in prison and he wasn't. And then, at the same time, as I can get behind the justice of throwing that guy in and throwing away the key forever and leaving him locked up for the rest of his life. And at the same time, simultaneously, I know that it would be an absolute injustice for some of these people I work with to still be locked up. And they had life sentences. And if they hadn't done, some people, they go to the parole board hearing dozens of times, and it's stressful and it's hard, and they get denied and they get judged, and they don't even get out. Some of them don't even get out, right? It's up to this small group of people who are on the parole board, and, who knows what their biases are? Who knows what they're thinking? Who knows how they're judging people?
Well, there's been a couple of instances of prisoners not getting out because they were model workers. Mm-hmm. They were too good to let go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what a tragedy that is, to deprive the outside world of someone who can do good. There's this one participant in the program that I'm a part of. She was serving 2 life sentences and was commuted. I'm not going to give any names in this. I really want to keep everyone's privacy, of course. But I do want to explain that this woman who served two life sentences for what I can only imagine was a terrible crime, to receive not just 2 life sentences, but 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole.
Oh, wow.
It must have been a terrible crime. I don't know. And if I did, I wouldn't say. But I will say that my experience of her is that she is one of the most intelligent, kind, driven, compassionate, imaginative, hardworking, caring people that I have ever met in my life. And she works so hard. She works harder than me. I'll be real with you. She works harder than me by a lot. And she is always doing something. If she's not in our program learning, she is at the prison bringing hope to the other women in there, talking about her experiences with them, supporting them, bringing them things that they need, supporting them with help getting legal advice, or writing a letter to the governor to request commutation. Like she supports these women so hard, and she's constantly, imagine spending like 30 years in prison, and then as soon as you get out, you're like, I've got to go back in and help the other people there.
Yeah, that woman is a saint.
Like literally a saint. It's insane. She's and look, she's just one example. She is just one example. All of these people that I work with are incredible, exceptional human beings. And most of them were serving life sentences. And the ones who weren't, also amazing people, still in prison for a lot of them. Like the ones who weren't serving life sentences, a lot of them, it's like petty crimes, and they do 5 or 10 years in prison for selling drugs. Like I said, like that's one of the most common reasons people go to prison is for selling drugs. So yeah, I don't remember exactly where my thought train was going with that, but that's
that was pretty good rant. I love it.
Thanks. I'm so sorry for monopolizing so much of our time.
Oh no, it's totally fine. We should get to art gallery.
We should. Do we want to break first?
No, let's just do it and wrap up the show. Like let's just do that, because we've been on for a minute.
Yeah, we have. We're already at 1:50. Okay, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
You go first.
Okay. So You know, I just realized the other day that my camera is like backwards and I'm not exactly sure how to fix it. And I don't know if I want to, because backwards means I look like I look in the mirror, and I like that better. But this bridge called
can
my
read it.
back. You can read it, but you know what? The people watching won't be able to. It'll be backwards for them.
Hold up a mirror, people at home.
Yeah, it's called This Bridge Called My Back, Writings by Radical Women of Color. And this book is a favorite of mine. I first read it in college, and it is essential reading for any person who wants to know more about social justice and how to support the queer community, women, people of color, you know, anyone who wants to understand how to be an ally, how to you know, step into anti-racism and just be fighting the good fight with some knowledge under their belt. This is a good one. And it's not just good for that, it's also very entertaining to read because it's really well written. It's a lot of different authors. Even the preface is like really good and really well written and really informative. The prose is beautiful. There's poetry in here. It's a large collection of a lot of different writings. This book also contains the Combahee River Collective Statement, which was kind of the birth of intersectionality, which, you know, intersectionality is such an important concept for our understanding of social justice today. So it is really essential reading. And I also highly recommend looking at any other works by the authors, Sherry Moraga and Gloria Anzaldúa. They are really brilliant women writers who also have a lot of other books that are super informative and beautiful and well written. So that is my art gallery rec for today.
Okay. So mine is actually They Want Us Gone. You know, it's by Judith Sonnet. I fucking love this book. As you know, you got me this book.
I love when a gift is loved.
I love this book. I still have to read the final. I didn't get to read the final story, but let me tell you, let me tell you a little bit about Judith Sonnet. She is a horror and splatterpunk author. If you, dear listener, don't know what splatterpunk is, well, you're in for a treat. She often writes dark, explicit, and gruesome novels. And she's a vegetarian and a queer woman, and I guess the biggest Nicolas Cage fan there is, according to her bio. But this is a collection of her short stories. The main character is usually a trans woman. And it is so beautifully done, but specifically the story that I kind of wanted to talk about was called, not Liquid. Liquid Sick is really good, but that's not the one I was thinking of. Actually, it's the next story. The third story, it's called A Pale Angel with Bright Red Eyes. And it is about a trans woman, and she's being led by the ghost of other trans women who have been wrongfully murdered, and they lead her to their murderers where they get justice served to them. And a lot of the stories actually like have to do with the justice that a lot of queer folks, specifically trans women, I mean trans men as well, but like trans women are murdered at such an alarming rate in the world.
Yeah.
Not just America, in the world.
Yeah.
It is fucking terrifying. And so, you know, I love queer authors. I read a lot of queer horror. Horror and queerness have always been lovers. They go hand in hand together. Horror has always been queer. And that's just a fact, and we'll actually touch down on that in future episodes, because
Absolutely. Ooh, we
it's
should,
fascinating, actually.
yeah, we should like maybe even do a whole episode that's about like queer literary history, you know, like, or
Oh,
queer
yes.
arts in general, you know?
Oh, yes, we could, well, we should break it down into movies, books, theater, because there's so much. Look, people, we would not have interesting things to watch and read if it was not for fucking queer people. I'm
Truth.
just saying, you want good books, look to queer people.
Facts.
Have always been there for us. They have always entertained us, and all they
100%.
want to do is just exist. So, go out and get yourself this short story. Now, look, also, it is very gory from the get-go. That is kind of the point of splatterpunk. It is very descriptive, very gory, and it does not shy away from themes of violence, sexuality, nudity, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be squeamish. If you are a squeamish person, splatterpunk is not your genre, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That is okay. And it's a really short read too. Like honestly, if I hadn't gotten distracted, I probably would have finished it in the bathtub today. Yeah. So that's my book. They Want Us Gone by Judith Sonnet. It's really fucking good. I'll probably finish the final story tonight.
I am so glad that you liked it.
I loved it. I loved it. I'm
Yay.
gonna start reading that Jordan Peele book next.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think I want to close us out by saying something about people taking care of themselves. Because I have a feeling that when people watch this episode, it might be a little hard for some folks to hear it. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Because look, what we have seen on the interwebs and social media is people don't like being told that their group of people can be the bully.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
don't like being told that because of the color of their skin, they might have it a little better. They don't want to believe that is true because that means that the things they've been telling themselves all these years so they feel better are not true.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do not want to admit that they've been lying to themselves about the way the world works.
Yeah. Or about how they see other people. Like, I think that's one of the things about, like, well meaning white liberals is that,
Hmm.
sometimes it's hard for them to hear that maybe um, they're still a little racist. Even if they claim the woke title, you might still be a little racist. And you don't
And you
mean.
know what? If you're willing to learn,
Exactly.
like it's okay to admit that sometimes you can be racist, because we're still learning here,
Yep.
But yes, that's a hard pill to swallow. I didn't want to say that sentence for the longest fucking time
Yep.
until I was like, nope, I still do racist things sometimes. I think it was like a couple of years ago I had that thought when I think I said colored person instead of person of color.
Which
And I want to
is.
say it was you that corrected me, and you were like, nope, Anne, you got it backwards.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, I did a racist thing, you guys. Like, I did a racist thing, and I didn't even realize, I honestly didn't realize that colored person and not person of color was rude. I
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah. Because
No one
it's
had
just,
told me.
yeah, it's just ignorance, like we are both white and we've grown up around white people, and those white people mostly grew up around white people. And so there is generational racism that has to be broken down and dug up and dealt with. And it is hard when you are someone who believes in your heart that you are not racist. It is hard to confront the idea that maybe you still are a little bit, and it's something to work on. Because honestly, if you're a white person, it doesn't matter how much work you've done. Like I have done a lot of work, and I guarantee you there will be a day where I make a mistake and I say the wrong thing and I hurt somebody. and I will need to admit that before I can correct it. And it's super hard for a lot of people to deal with that idea. And so what I want to say is, please, if you are feeling tense after this episode, if you are feeling irritated or reactionary, if you're feeling defensive, take some deep breaths, go run an ice bath, have some hot cocoa, and just think about it. Just think about it for a little bit. Yeah.
Bubbles.
Yeah. Just think about it for a little bit. Let it wash over you. Let it ruminate in your brain. Consider where some of these truths might be happening. Because, you know, one thing I often say is, if it's not true, you can just, you know, if the criticism that you're getting is not true, or the thing someone's telling you is not true about you, whatever, it's not going to bother you because it's not true. If it hurts, if you feel defensive, it's probably because there's little truth to it. That's usually how that goes. So
Yeah.
we love you all so much. And I love you, Anne.
Cool.
And that was Petunias and Potholes. And until next time.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. And I want to say, look to the stars for our next subject. It's going to be a good one.
Ooh, look to the stars for the next topic. I love it. All right, y'all. Good night.
Have a good night.